Hello and welcome. Today we're going to talk about Delphi and OpenAI. I'm Geuze from GDK Software, and the topic of today is Delphi and OpenAI, a blessing or a curse. The agenda of this talk is divided into three parts. I'm first going to show you how to get started with OpenAI. This will be a relatively short part, as there's a lot of information you already can find on the internet. The second part is about the integration in Delphi itself, using the ToolsAPI. We go into some detail on how to create a Delphi plugin and how to implement shortcuts and forms in Delphi. And lastly, we will connect everything together and see what we can do with OpenAI and Delphi. And of course, we hope to get an answer if OpenAI and Delphi is something you can use in your daily life. Alright, just 30 seconds to explain who I am and what GDK Software does. I'm Geuze, co-owner of GDK. We have several teams in the Netherlands, the UK and in Brazil working for a variety of international projects and clients. Besides software development, we also do a lot of Delphi upgrades, and we have a Delphi Hero mailing list where we regularly publish interesting related Delphi content. Alright, that's all for now. Let's get started.
Let's start with a clear distinction. OpenAI is not the same as ChatGPT. OpenAI is a research and development company, and ChatGPT is only one of the tools they released recently, and one of the tools they get a lot of attention with. But it's not the only tool we're going to use today. The reason why we are using different tools is not only that we are at this moment not really interested in the chat functionality, but that we also want to integrate the tools with Delphi. And as of today, that's only possible with the paid versions. So let me first quickly explain the way the OpenAI tools are available. So you have the free version of the ChatGPT tool, and probably you've played around with this tool already. But there's more available. As you can see here, OpenAI offers various tools to create images, to translate natural language to code, and to perform various other natural language tasks. And of course, everything using artificial intelligence. So the various OpenAI tools are available using a paid plan, where you only pay for what you use. So you pay, let's say, for generating an image or for creating OpenAI related tasks and do, let's say, grammar correction. The various OpenAI tools are available using a paid plan where you only pay for what you use. So as you can see, you can pay per image or per token, which loosely translates to 1 word per token. So the first thing you have to do is create an account. I already did that, so let's obtain our key. So here you can see the secret keys. I already copied this, and you can see the usage per key, so what you actually use. When you register, you get some grant or credit, so you can start immediately. But if you'd like to use the API more intensively, I'd recommend to add billing information. So now that we have the API key, let's head over to some examples to show you what you can do with OpenAI. So let's go to the examples, and here you can see what is available as an example. But of course, you can add whatever request you have into the OpenAI API. So what can you do? Well, here you can see some examples. You can classify objects or companies in this case, where you would say, okay, I want to have this response, and it will automatically fill in the rest of the items. You can translate SQL or ask for SQL. So build a query, and you will get the exact query. You can parse unstructured data. So there's really a lot of things you can ask. So let's go to the playground to see what we can do with Delphi. So the playground, you can specify an input using various models. So you can choose a specific model. The most advanced one is the most expensive one, of course. But you can see what works for your actual request. You can specify the amount of tokens you want to use. And as you can see here, I've created a function which returns a t-list of type string. And I asked the OpenAI to explain what this actual function does. So if I submit this question, it will come back to us with the explanation of this function. And as you can see, it's quite a nice answer. So you can also ask the OpenAI to change the function. So let's say we want to change this to an iList. I can ask change this function to return a interface list, and maybe add of integers. And if we ask this, then you will see you get a nice list, an interface list, and it even changes the example code in here. So that works really well. Okay, now let's go one step further and create a OpenAI connector in Delphi. And yeah, why not use the OpenAI itself to help me with that? So for this, let's use the ChatGPT functionality so you can see how that works. But basically, we could put this in here, of course, as well. So I'd like to program against interfaces. So let's ask the following. Create a class to connect to the OpenAI API, written in Delphi. And because I'd like to program against interfaces, let's add using interfaces. So we'll have to wait till until it's done, but it'll generate an interface, as you can see, to connect to this to the OpenAI API using Indy in this case. And of course, we could also ask to use the TREST request if we want. For now, I'll use this generated code. And as you can see, it's not quite right, because it's just a interfaced object, but the actual connection to the OpenAI interface is not there. So let's ask it again and a bit different. All right, and as you can see in the second example, it actually implements the correct API using HTTPS. It adds the required parameters. So this is the actual class you could use. However, there's an easier way of using OpenAI in Delphi. There's a nice Delphi OpenAI API project on GitHub, and you also can get this via the Get It package manager in Delphi, which provide access to the API, and that's the one we're going to use in our example. So here we have a demo project with a prompt button to send the actual request and a memo to display the results. If you've not installed the OpenAI library, you can find it using the Get It Package Manager, searching for OpenAI, and you can install the required library. Okay, so let's implement the button to connect to the OpenAI API. So we need an instance of the library. So OpenAI, OpenAI.create. You can paste the key right away when you create it. Of course, you need a key to connect to the OpenAI. So now we have the OpenAI library available. We can also use various functions within the OpenAI library. In this case, I'm going to use the completion library I showed you earlier in the playground. So I want to use the OpenAI.completions, and I can create an instance of that as well. So completions, OpenAI.completion. .create, and here we have to give a couple of parameters to provide a prompt and the maximum amount of tokens the system can use. So this is an anonymous procedure. You have to provide a params. And as you can see here, you can specify a model. We're going to use the DaVinci model again. You can provide a prompt and the, for example, the maximum amount of tokens you want to use. As a default, it's 16. That's not too much. So we need to add more, or to increase the maximum amount of tokens. So let's first add a prompt, which is the text of our edit box. We want to add the model in here, which is the text DaVinci 3. And let's say we want the maximum amount of tokens to be 1000. So that is around 750 actual letters. So now that we have the completions, we can use this and free the completions afterwards, because we need to do that. Within the completions API, you get a list of choices back. So the input results in various choices. For now, I'll just pick the first one. So choice in choices. Okay, so we'll pick the first one and we'll just break out of the loop for now. So as you can see here, choice dot text is the resulting text. So we'll put this into the memo we created. There you go. And let's run this. So as an example, create a class to manage a company written in Delphi. So the system uses my API key, which of course I will change after the presentation. It sends the request, and if everything goes well, I'll get a response in here. sometimes it takes time, depends a bit on how busy it is at OpenAI. Currently it's quite busy, so a lot of people are using OpenAI. But usually we'll get this result within a couple of seconds. It's now taking a bit longer. I'll just wait for the results. There you go. So I get back a T-company class. It adds a couple of private fields, and it even creates properties. So currently I can see it's only read. You could ask the system to give more info, to add writable properties or editable properties, to make these interfaces, etc. You get it. But as you can see, the basics are working. So now we can go to the next step, which is see if we can integrate this into the Delphi IDE. We do this using the ToolsAPI. The ToolsAPI in Delphi is the way to build additional functionality in Delphi. There's some information to find here at Embarcadero's website, but even better is this GitHub page with David Hoyle's updated version. All right, so our goal today is simple: integrate into the IDE the code that I showed you earlier to connect to the OpenAI API. So there are several ways of doing this, of course. You can add a separate prompt, for example, in a dockable form in the Delphi IDE, or interpret the code that you're typing. For this demo, we choose to activate the functionality using a shortcut and by typing in my question. So we start by creating a Delphi package for our plugin. So let's go to here, new package. Let's save it like Delphicon OpenAI. And what we have to do is add the design ID to the requires, because that's the only way you can use the Tools API from within this package. So design ID. There you go. Okay. Let's now add a new unit where we first implement a key binding. So I'll create a OpenAI.key. Maybe let's change the name because this one is already used by the library we installed earlier. So delphicon.openai.keybindings. And save it somewhere. Okay, so we need to use the Tools API, of course, and the Tools API has several interfaces you can use. So if you search for key binding, you have all kinds of services, interface services you can use in your own package to connect to the Tools API or to Delphi, basically. So let's do that right now. The OpenAI key bindings is a class. You have the T notifier object, which you can use, and here you have a lot of interfaces. In this case, we want to have the keyboard binding. There you go. And we need to implement several functions that are defined by this interface. So these are the functions that we need to define. So let's say I paste them in here. And we can use the binding services now to add a shortcut. So add key binding. We have to provide an array of the shortcut, and there's a way of adding a shortcut. I think it's text to shortcut. So let's say we use Control Shift F7. This one is in vcl.menu. There you go. And the key binding has two other properties, which is the procedure that's going to be executed if the shortcut is pressed, and some flags. So in this case, we want to create a new procedure. So let's say bind, and we have to define this one, of course, and add nil, like this. So now we have to define the bind procedure. So let's do that in here. Private procedure bind. And I think there's a certain way of providing the actual notifier implementation, which we can find here. Let me see if I can find it. There you go. So this is the way of defining a procedure that gets called when you press the key button. So I'll just copy the parameters of this one, paste it in here. And I think we need to change this one to here. And add system.classes. All right. Oh, we got an error. Okay. So here we have the procedure that gets fired if you press this specific key in Delphi. So later on we will implement the OpenAI functionality in here, or probably in another unit. For now, I'll just let's say I do a show message, dialogues. Key pressed to see if our plugin works. Now we have to do some other things to get this to work, which is implement the binding type, the display name, and the name. So let's say in here we say results would be Delphicon. AI, and the get name should be something like this. And we have to implement a get binding type as well, which is binding type dot partial for now. Okay, and lastly, we have to add something to the implementation and the finalization section of this unit. So the plugin will be initialized if you install this package. So let me just copy these two lines and paste them here. And we need to create for now, just say create a global var or local to this class to store the key binding index. And as you can see here, we need to say, okay, we want to create an instance of this key binding class, and if it's created and Delphi is running, remove the key binding from the Delphi services. So let's install this package and see if it works. I get an error. Let me see. Oh. There you go. So it's installed. And now if I press Control Shift F7, we get the show message we defined here. So as you can see, it's quite easy to add a key binding to Delphi. Now we need to do two more things. First of all, check if the key code is our actual key. So let me copy this to here. So in case our key code is the shortcut we defined, then we need to do something, of course. And we should set the binding result to handled. So this could be t binding result dot handled. So now we intercept the specific key we defined. We do the show message, and we set the binding result so that we have actually handled this shortcut. So the next step is to access the contents of the Delphi editor. So what we want to do is see what a user typed in, give this to the OpenAI API, and provide the results back. So let's first see what we can do with the context we get here. So the key context is a interface to several functions, and I'm going to use the edit buffer in this case to get access to the actual edit buffer in the Delphi IDE. And if you go down to the edit buffer itself, you can get, for example, the selection. So the selected text, you can add information or delete information. So let's first try that and see if we can get the information out of the context. So what we will do is, instead of the key pressed show message, we'll just show what a user selected in the Delphi editor. So if you go to context dot edit buffer, we can make use of the edit block to see what text the user selected. So let's say selected text becomes this, and we show the selected text in here instead of the show message we had earlier. And now if I install it and test it, you should be able to see the text that we selected. So let's say I do this, I press the key, and as you can see, I get the selected text in here. And that's the way we're going to use the OpenAI integration for now. So what I'd like to do later on is select the text, get this to the OpenAI, and replace the text with the results of OpenAI. But first we're going to change this a bit so we can actually insert text into the Delphi editor. For this we're going to use the context again. And we're going to pick the edit position from the edit buffer, and here you can insert, let's say, a text. So if we would say, okay, we add a test text in here, and test this, we install it again, we should be able to select some text, and it will get replaced by test. So let's say I pick this one, I press the key button, and you can see the text I selected is replaced by this text. So now we can implement the OpenAI to be able to insert some text into our files. So let's revert this change. Okay. And here I have the form which we created earlier with the connection to the OpenAI. So if we copy this text and put it in a different function in here, so let's say function send request to OpenAI. We pass in a prompt, and we get a result back. We'll paste the text in here, we need to add some uses. So that will be OpenAI. And it will be OpenAI.completions. And now replace this with the prompt and set the result to the text we get back. And finally, we're going to query here the OpenAI API with our selected text and place the results back into the edit buffer. So here we would say for OpenAI result is send request with the selected text and insert this into our editor. So install this. Probably we need to change some settings in here because we don't have a component available. We should provide nil to the class. We need to add the rest components and it's installed. So now let's put a test in here just to see if it's working. So I'll ask the same as we did earlier, create a class to manage AT company written in Delphi. I select all this and I'll hit the shortcut. And now the system will query the OpenAI API and paste back the results. There you go. The only thing is, as you can see here, it's all in one line. So we need to make some changes in our code to make sure that we'll get this class on separate lines instead of all on one line. So let's first delete this text in here and go back to where we queried the OpenAI. So what we have to do is we have to split the result into separate lines. So say this will be text to insert. What we want to have is an array of string, and we say, okay, the OpenAI result. We're going to split this, and we do this for the end of line characters. There you go. So what we now have is a list of strings, and what we're going to do is insert these one by one. So for in line of the text to insert, do move this one to here, and say, okay, we are going to insert line by line. We have to add the line break as well, because we want to go to the next line. And the other thing we have to do is move to the let's one further. Edit position. Move. Let me see where I can. Oh, I have the option. That's why. There you go. Move to the beginning of the line. Because if we enter the line, then the cursor will stay at the same position. So you have to move to the start of the line and then paste the next line. So let's see if we can do this. So we now installed the plugin again. Let me add a new unit because then you can better see what's happening. We're going to do that again. So create a class to manage a company in Delphi. I select all this text, hit the key, and there you go. So as you can see here, we have a class for managing a company created by OpenAI, including the implementation in here, with some constructor and properties. I think it even includes a T-list, so we need to add some users here, but it even includes an employee list without me specifying it, and the system adds, or the OpenAI API adds some procedures to add and remove employees, currently based on strings, but you can ask this again and specify a bit more the type of class you exactly want to have. Now let's do some more examples before we come to a conclusion. So let's say you want a SQL statement to update a company. You should be able to add it in here. So write a SQL to update the address field of a company. We select all this and we hit the key again. And there you go. So that's an easy one. But let's see if we can change some other things in here. So let's say we want to rewrite this, and for this part we want to extract this to a function. We could simply say rewrite this code to a function returning a choice text. Select this all again, hit the key, and there you go. Well, you see a couple of errors in here, so there are some enters. But that's something has something to do probably with our implementation right now. But this is a function you could extract. It'll accept a completion and it returns a string. And as you can see here, it replaces the result with the choice pin text. So it does work. Now for our last example, let's add a new unit again. And let's say we want to create a class to connect to Gmail to retrieve emails, again written in Delphi. We execute the shortcut and let's see what the system comes back with. There you go. Right, so it creates this Gmail connection. It uses the string list, so we should use sysutils. Oh, have to put it on top. Classes. It adds the implementation, and I'm not quite sure if the code compiles. Probably not, because there are some errors, I think, in here. But for now, you get an idea of what you can do with the OpenAI connection we have. So let's go back to the slides and wrap things up. So we've built a Delphi package so we can use the OpenAI API from within Delphi itself. I don't have the time to show you more examples of the integration, but I'm really looking forward to your suggestions on how to use this in your daily life. Let me share my findings so far. OpenAI is very useful to create skeletons for classes to create proof of concepts, connecting to various APIs, as I've showed you, and to help you in creating functionality within your application. I've used the AI for various tasks, and most of the time it's just faster than Googling something. But it also has its limitations. OpenAI can very convincingly create complete nonsense. Several times I've asked something to OpenAI, got a very nice interface class back, but with non-existing Delphi calls. And then the fun begins, because suddenly you have to debug code that has been written by some tools who can make beautiful mistakes. So if we have time at the end of this session, maybe I can show you some of these examples. So what is it? A blessing or a curse? I'm not sure yet. The future will tell. But with the progress being made, I think our job as developers will change, and we will increasingly ask for the help of AI. In the end, it will help us to develop faster. So that's it. Thanks for being here. I think it's now time for Q&A.
What a great presentation. I really enjoyed that. I've had a great day today. Jim not being available, I've been getting to do all the hosting and some fantastic sessions. And the good news is we have Marco live with us today for the Q&A. Hello, Marco.
Hello, hi. Good
what
to
a
see
great!
you.
I really enjoyed that presentation. That was an absolutely fantastic thing. It's great to watch a craftsperson. Really, that's what I would call you, an engineer typing away and actually typing code live in the presentation. You're a very brave man.
Well, that was fun to do. Absolutely.
Yeah, but I think it's good as well, because as I've said this before, when people type code live, it shows that even really excellent programmers, and I actually consider, based on what I've seen of you, your stuff. People make mistakes, forgetting a semicolon or something like that. That's part of being a programmer. Absolutely. I say this all the time, a developer. Yep. Lots of questions, lots of positive feedback as well. People saying things. Let's have a look at what we've got. Okay. First of all, I think we'll just put up your website just here, which was gdksoftware.com/knowledge base. I went to there. If people haven't gone there yet, they should do, because you've got some really great articles on all sorts of other subjects as well, like unit testing and stuff like that. So definitely worth taking a look if they haven't already done so. With regard to the questions, let's go and have a look at what we're doing. Mm-hmm. First of all, I'll really put my comment in here whilst we give that time for those that caption to be taken in by people so they can note it down. And that is what you just did in that presentation. I don't know if people really took it in, but I certainly did, that what you just wrote live in 41 minutes was basically Copilot for Delphi. I mean, you really did. I mean...
Yeah, there are, of course, some rough edges. So, but yeah, absolutely. It's that's one of the great benefits of Delphi. I think that indeed in 40 minutes, well, even less, I think, because of all the talking I do, you have something like this, which is great. Yeah.
Yeah, so boo-hoo to you, Microsoft, because I mean, obviously Microsoft own OpenAI. I think they don't own them, but I think they've put a huge investment behind them.
Exactly. Yeah, we might use a bit of Microsoft in here, but still, or OpenAI. But yeah, indeed, it's great.
Yeah, Microsoft. I mean, kudos to Microsoft there. I think they realized that OpenAI was obviously the way to go, and I think Google really were wrong-footed by it, because they just did a presentation on their own AI offerings, and dispassionately I can say it flopped massively. So it's nice to see Microsoft scoring over Google for a change. I like Google, but, okay, so down to the questions then. Someone said here, this is more of a comment rather than a question. They're saying with ChatGPT, you can create the DFM structure for buttons as well and things like that.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, you can indeed ask. Well, that's basically sort of the same as we are using with ChatGPT. Is of course more a conversational style, whereas this one, the plugin I showed you right now, is more asking direct questions and getting the answer back. But you certainly can ask questions like, "Give me also the event structure," or for the same class, and it works quite well. Yeah.
Yeah. So is there like a conversation, or is it just you can say ask the question in a way that includes the context?
Exactly. Yeah. For now, with the plugin I have, is indeed just a one-off, so it doesn't remember what you asked before. The ChatGPT, of course, does. So yeah, basically the same engine is behind both. So probably, I don't know, probably there will be an OpenAI API to ChatGPT as well. Or maybe there is already, I don't know.
It's the DaVinci, isn't it?
Fast. I think by now you also have the paid version of ChatGPT already. While I did the recording, it wasn't available. I think right now it is. So things are moving quite fast with these new techniques.
Oh, I'm positive that 2023 will be the year where AI just becomes so huge that people can't view it as a kind of science fiction anymore. It's a science fact. And there's a lot of discussion. I mean, your heading of your topic was a blessing or a curse, and I think that's actually a very good choice, because I had a conversation. Someone emailed me from one of the other sessions. I always get a lot of emails when I do the hosting, and someone asked me that question: did I think it was a blessing or a curse? And I kind of went on and said, well, I can see it will not be long before we pick up our cell phones, and when we go to type a message, instead of autocorrect, it will actually suggest answers in full based on the AI. And I think we're almost at that stage now. I mean, Gmail certainly includes that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that's something that will happen, if we like it or not. That will happen with the development work we do as well. It will change, definitely. And exactly how, we don't know yet, but yeah.
Well, you did say something interesting that I thought would definitely make a point there, which you said sometimes it can produce some very convincing nonsense, and I thought, that's absolutely the case.
Yeah, it is.
There's something to watch out for, and I think it's like a lot of things where if you think about it. As a developer, when you work on someone else's project, it's always a little bit frustrating because they do things slightly different to the way you do. And if, of course, the AI is probably a combination of all sorts of different programmer styles and ideas. I'm not sure that there is an OpenAI DaVinci code style for Delphi. I think it's a conglomeration of everybody.
Not yet.
Yeah. Well, I can see a time where the Control D, which does the automated formatting, may actually be applied at the end of the chat GPT or OpenAI or whatever AI is in there. So, okay, one particular question where I need to find it, which is here we go. Someone said, is the key bindings unit available to download anywhere? Are the examples that you showed?
Yes, I showed, I think, in the last slide. So if you go to gdksoftware.com/Delphicon, there you find the links, all the links I mentioned. So also to the ToolsAPI libraries, but also to the GitHub repository where you can find this unit.
Sorry, what was the end of that link? It was Delphicon.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna put that in here, and that's the one. Yeah,
that's the one.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so the answer is yes, it is available, and you can go and get it there, which is handy. Can it do? This is another good question as well. Can it do class based on inheritance? So if you now, I think I know the answer to this. So if you said, can I have Candy Company, which descends from Tea Company? I'm guessing that because it's not a kind of contextually following on from a previous question, that would be a lot harder.
It will, although if you ask a question like this, so create me a class like Candy Company based or descends from company or from Tea Company or then it will return the right code. So it also knows how to do inheritance or like interfaces. So if you would ask, give me a T company class, but interfaced, it will also create an interface for you, including a GUID and all the properties in there. So I'm quite sure it can. The class inheritance itself, I haven't tried that yet, but I know for sure that if you like ask things like based on an interface or based on a certain interface, it will just return exactly what you were asking for. So, yeah.
Do they mention at all the stopping point at which they stopped training the model? Because I know with ChatGPT, they have a thing where they say it was up until November 21 or something like that. So it didn't know anything that happened after that. So
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So probably, I don't know. Yeah, what the latest Delphi editions are from November 21. Would be nice to ask that to see if it knows about that. I don't know. Probably not, indeed. Probably the training stopped then, but I'm not completely sure. Yeah.
I hope they're going to periodically retrain it, because the problem is that Delphi is always pushing the barriers and trying to add new features. And some of the new features, like, in fact, it was quite funny because someone did actually comment on this, and they said, "Oh, it's very cool, but this OpenAI library is written in modern Delphi using inline variables and is not compatible with Delphi versions older than Tokyo." I think your examples use the inline variables, but
I really love them.
Yeah, and I don't think the OpenAI was returning inline variables, which is a different. No, and I think that's the thing there, that maybe there's a little bit of confusion. Radno, or however you call yourself, the example was using inline variables, and I have to say, a little confession here. When the inline variables first came out, I was absolutely dead set against it. I've been a Delphi programmer since the day. Yeah, and I think that's true of many MVPs. Are like, no, we can't do this. This is complete heresy, you know. But you know what? Once you get to start using them, it's very addictive, because they've got awful lots of benefits to do with scoping, and it just makes it easier to write the flow of code. So
so much easier, and indeed scoping, but that's a completely other topic.
Yeah, and the OpenAI unit that you quoted, does that work with early versions of Delphi, or?
No, same, I think, because of the inline variables. So it's perhaps not too difficult to change and get rid of these. Probably easier to just upgrade, right? But
there's quite a few OpenAI libraries as well. This is from Helmutium, Delphi OpenAI, and there was another one. Get It has the OpenAI for Delphi as well. If you go and get it, and you can see it there, and then you know, I think that what's going to happen is there's going to be a big fight over whose implementation is the one to have, and then eventually the winners will come out, and we'll all benefit from it. I think it's a very exciting development in terms of what's happening across the world. We've still got a little while to go, so whilst we're talking about this, this is kind of like a housekeeping thing as well for us, but there is the part of this OpenAI and all the rest of it is the Mid-Journey applications to do with creating images, because obviously it's another abuse or use of AI where people are saying, "Oh, take this image of Ian and then age it by 20 years so I look like I'm a corpse or a mummy or something like that," or produce variations. And I had a hilarious image where it produced what looked like I had 4 brothers, and they all looked very suspicious. So, but Mid-Journey is another AI. And if you go to the blog there and the Delphi Digital Fan Art Contest, there is a competition to produce some AI art, and it's extremely interesting. And there is actually a GitHub repo as well, where there's some really great backdrops and wallpapers and things like that, which are all AI generated. and I actually went in and edited a few to make them higher resolution and stuff like that as well. But I think the problem is Mid-Journey makes them into squares, and really, if it's going to generate backdrops, it needs to make them rectangular. But yeah, very, very interesting. Is there anything else? Let's see. I think that covers all the questions that we've got so far. What is your take really overall on where you think the AI is going to be in the next sort of year or so? I mean, do you think it's realistic that there's going to be an add-on? In fact, you may be the guy that creates it. I don't know. You're halfway there.
I don't know. Although so difficult. Yeah. I think so. So one of the other things that we don't show, couldn't show is like finding bugs in code, let's say, or optimizing code. So there are lots and lots of ways, I think, to be in addition to your daily work. I think it will take some time for the adoption to everyone to get used to that and to actually use the help of AI. So will this be within a year? I don't know. Could be. You always it's always difficult to predict these kind of things. But with the progress, as we see, you can ask the AI. But
oh, that's a good idea. When do you think you will reach singularity and take over the world? I wonder if anybody's asked them that yet.
Yeah, yes. No, but I certainly it will probably make our lives easier in certain ways. So yeah, it will have an impact on the way we write code. So
yeah, I think so, and hopefully.
Yeah,
I think it'll enhance us. Actually, I think that's the thing, because as you said about your convincing nonsense, I think there's always going to be, you can hire contractors in to come and help you write code, but occasionally those contractors write code that you completely disagree with, even though it's perfectly compiles and it's perfectly valid. Exactly. I'm hoping that we will still have a future for some time to come. I haven't got many years left in my life, but I'm hoping that.
I think
that AI is slower than my lifespan, so we shall see. But it's a very exciting time, and I mean it is, of course, there's controversial things about AI as well, and lots of people worrying about what's going to go on in terms of will AI be used in ways that are negative? The one thing that came up actually in a conversation the other day is to do with the blog writing. Someone was saying, I actually edit some of the Embarcadero blogs, and someone said, do you worry about plagiarism by writers, or do you worry about them using AI to produce articles? And there is actually an AI that's specifically designed for writing articles, and that's called Jasper AI. And ChatGPT and OpenAI was then set to help detect articles that were written by the AI, which I thought was amazing that they now can fighting them as well. But a lot of plagiarism tools have incorporated OpenAI's techniques to spot AI-generated text. So I don't know how that's going to end up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's also one of the comments I saw, that you have to be careful what you send to, especially ChatGPT, because that will be used in training their model. So make sure that you. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, Spotify have just announced that they've had a deal with ChatGPT, where all of the podcasts that they had were being used to train, not ChatGPT, OpenAI. We must separate it. So were used to. They had a deal with a company called Findaway, and this is relevant to me because I actually am an audiobook narrator, amongst other things. And Findaway were doing a deal with Spotify and OpenAI, and were training the AI-generated voices using the narrator's voice. And then they were using AI to narrate other audiobooks. And of course, what happens there is that they're using the narrator's work to replace the narrators. and there was a big fuss about that. And of course, it's a lot more difficult to replace a developer, although you've shown that it's not that difficult. But the narrating, they've actually had to drop that deal because there was such a fuss, because all of the narrators said, wait a minute, there's a union for that. That's not okay.
Exactly, yeah. And I think so it will be something maybe which will happen the same with code or code generation, or maybe even building applications. So right now we just ask, of course, to write some code, but maybe in the future you can ask to write even more complex programs. How on what code is that based, and who owns the code? They're all nice.
Our code. That's the thing, and it's I don't know. Well, I think overall it's a good thing. I think that
absolutely,
it's obvious that there's going to be a lot of twitching and worrying about AI, because it's a new era. Up until probably last year, this kind of AI, we had. I'll call it the Amazon robot, because I have one down here, and if I say its real name that ends in a it will answer. But up until then, people thought that these intelligent assistants were AI, but I think we're realizing now that was not the case, that they're just very clever, interactive bots, whereas the AI is actually now, it's gone from science fiction to science facts, and that's a little bit more concerning. But it's great. Anyway, great session. I really enjoyed it. You fantastic presentation, and you did a really good job of explaining it. And I think you covered most of the questions during the session, which is why we didn't have a lot to talk about. Okay, well, thanks a lot, and I'll speak to you soon.